Hello, I'm Steve Mann and this is Paper Classroom. In this particular history tutorial we're going to talk about Western raw materials after about the 1850s. Just to carry on where I left off in the previous video, we did mention that René de Riemer in 1719 observed wasps biting chunks out of trees, chewing them up and spitting them out to make these very neat paper wasp nests. And he commented, maybe one day we'll be as good as the wasps and we may be able to make paper from trees. Well, his wish came true. I'll just outline what happened over the next 100 years or so in this particular video tutorial, and then in subsequent tutorials we'll talk in more detail about the processes. So the first point on the timeline is the 1850s. In the 1850s, mechanical pulping was developed. And what we mean by mechanical pulping is basically taking a tree or a wood chip and smashing it to pieces to make individual fibres. If you were to analyse a tree and analyse a mechanical pulp, chemically analyse them, if you were to analyse them separately, it would be impossible to tell the difference. So mechanical pulps have exactly the same chemical constituents as a tree. You've just simply shredded a tree. And there are several different mechanical pulping methods, and we'll talk about those in subsequent videos. About 10-ish years later, 1860, was the first foraging into making chemical pulps. Now with a chemical pulp, you take a tree, you chop it down into wood chips, and then you stew it up with chemicals, usually under high temperatures and high pressures with some quite aggressive chemicals. And what that does, that dissolves the lignin between the fibres, and then you throw that liquid away and you're left with your fibres. Now, of course, if you chemically analyse what we call a chemical pulp made that way, it's nothing like analysing a tree because all the lignin's gone. With mechanical pulp, if you start off with a ton of tree, you'll end up with almost a ton of fibre. With chemical pulp, you start off with a ton of tree, you'll only end up with about half a ton of fibre because you've dissolved half of it and thrown it away. So again, we'll talk about that later. Of all the chemical pulping processes that were made, one has truly dominated the world, and this is the Kraft process. Chemically, it's called the sulfate process. It was invented by a German chemist, and he discovered that the pulp or the fibres made by his process made a much stronger piece of paper than by other chemical processes. And because the German word for strong is Kraft, he called this process the strong process, hence the Kraft process. If we move forward to the 1970s now, we've found a new source of raw material, and that is recycled fibre. Just like Matthias Koop suggested, just like the Japanese suggested. But now this has become really big business. Globally, it's really big business. And it's environmentally friendly. Just to mention a little bit about just an introduction to recycled fibre, there are 5 major groups of recycled fibre, and each of those groups can be divided into 10 or more subgroups. So there are over 50 different grades of recycled fibre. There are 50 ways, more than 50 ways of categorising what type of recycled fibre you want. You've got the very, very best quality, best white shavings, and at the bottom end you've got mixed waste. Best white shavings come from the printer. It's never been touched by human hands. It's just the offcuts from the printing process. So that's why it's the best quality. At the other end of the scale, the mixed waste, it'll contain string and wood and plastic and dead animals, body parts, who knows, everything. But it's the lowest quality. So there's a whole range of 50 different groups in recycled fibre. This chart here is taken from 2015, courtesy of the CPI. And you can see what happens to recycled fibre in the UK. When I was first involved in recycled fibre in the 1970s, all the recycled fibre that was collected in the UK was used in the UK. But look at it now. Just under 40% of the recycled fibre that we produce in the UK is used in the UK. Over 45% is exported to China, and the remainder is exported to the EU and other countries. So it's a really big export business. Using recycled fibre has advantages. It has economic advantages and it has social and environmental advantages. I'll mention these here, but I'll also mention them in later videos. It's a cheaper fibre. Buying a reused or an old newsprint or an old cardboard box is a lot cheaper than buying the virgin fibres to make that product. They have lower processing costs. When you take a fibre, you've got to do work on it to turn it into the article that you want it to be. So when you're buying a recycled fibre, that work has already been done. You don't need to do any more work on it. You only need to clean it up. So you've got much lower processing costs. Within that recycled product, there may be other chemicals you can recover, things like fillers like chalk or clay or titanium dioxide. And of course, if you're using your own recycled fibre, you're not having to bring trees in from another country, and therefore you're going to lower the balance of payments of the country. And if you export recycled fibre, as we saw there, to China or Europe or other places, you're also reducing the country's balance of payments. And there are, as I say, social and environmental advantages. Fewer trees are felled. If you're using recycled fibre, you're not having to fell some trees to make that product. Less landfill. Normally that's what happens to paper. It just goes in a big hole in the ground. So you're saving that space for something else. There's a lot of manual sorting involved in sorting recycled fibre into its 50 grades. So it provides jobs. And not so much nowadays, but it used to be a good income for charities at one time. Well, thank you for watching this video again. I hope you enjoyed it. Please watch our other videos and enjoy them equally. And please give us some feedback. Thank you very much for your time.